Hey guys, welcome to Pancreas Pals. Emily here.
And Christie.
I'm having flashbacks to our earlier seasons, Christy. I used to remember how I used to get the giggles every time after we did our intro.
I do, but this was so my fault. Context for everyone. I'm trying this new trend. I'm trying to moisturize my hands because my skin has just been like V dry recently. So I put on Vaseline and cotton gloves that I like ordered online special, but I can't I keep holding up my hands and Emily can see I look like a murderer.
I need to take a picture of this, but I also don't want anyone to see Christy. I
I
just need
almost
this
feel
to be myself.
fancy. I wish that
You
they
do
were
look
like elbow
fancy.
I wish that they were elbow length. I
I
think
wish
that
I
would
could
be
show
the
you guys.
thing.
So it's like a cross between like Bridgerton, dainty gloves and also like murder gloves.
Yeah, because
Um,
they're like tight at the
at the
wrist and
wrist.
kind of an elegant way. I'll have Zach take a pic and
Thank you,
frighten you
thank
all.
you.
It can be the
We'll post
cover.
it.
I was gonna say it can be like the cover image for this.
I'm dead. Okay, so that's actually contrary to what you might think. This episode is not about skincare, even
No.
though I could talk your ear off about that. This episode is about managing diabetes in a world where we're back out there and doing some social things with friends and kind of how to field questions, some rude comments that I'm sure aren't meant to be malicious, but also can be, like kind of how do you take things now? Um, but the older we get, I don't know about you, Christy, the older I get, the longer I've had diabetes, which by the way, this is my 8th diaversary um in like 2
Mazel.
weeks. Thank you. Thank you. I've made it this far.
Pre-mazel.
Yeah, pre-muzzle. But yeah, the older I get, the more I like to educate people, but also the less patience I have. And I think that's just also like a COVID world type of thing where I'm like, guys, just like stay on your own shit and leave me alone. But Christy, how have you, because I know you're not in office right now.
Mhm.
You're not, but we're still out and about. You just moved into a new home. You are, with your family more these days because you moved back to New Jersey. So like how has the refresher with not just your family but with friends been for you? Like have you realized some friends forget like you beep sometimes and things like that?
So it's actually not so much friends, it's more people that I'm first meeting, and I f I never like to blame the other person in social interactions because I know that I can be so awkward. I think because I use humor as such a coping mechanism, if, like, my alarm goes off or, I just beep as CGMs, etcetera, do, or I'm checking my blood sugar manually, whatever, um, I think because I present so comfortable with it, and it's not necessarily that I'm uncomfortable with the fact that I have diabetes, but I feel like if I make a joke about it, like if someone asks, "Oh, are you diabetic?" I don't know why my go-to phrase is like, "As the day is long." I don't know why. I don't know what it is. It just rolls off the tongue. But
Honestly, I love it.
I think sometimes people take that as a, "Oh, so like you're someone I can just like make a kind of borderline rude comment or like I can ask an inappropriate question about diabetes." And no, like you can I always think that there's room for a sense of humor, but I can joke about it in a way that others can't. And I feel like my family knows the boundary just because we've made jokes about it so much. Um,
And when we say jokes, we don't necessarily mean like, "Oh, I ate too many cookies, now I'm diabetic." It's more like, "Oh, I'm a pincushion," or like, things
yeah.
like that, kind of coping with it in a different way, which I know some people cope with it in, a less, PC way in terms of jokes, but Christy's not saying her family talks to her like that. I just wanted to clarify.
No, I feel I'm so comfortable with my family. We can be silly with it, but I won't name names. But someone in recent years, I'm not even going to identify or like pinpoint the timeline.
Yeah, don't do it.
I'm sure I made my "as the day is long" joke, and the person's response to "Oh, are you diabetic?" "As the day is long" was, "Oh yeah, I could tell just by looking at you." I know he was making a joke, but that is just so offensive. Whether you're type 1, you're type 2, there is such a spectrum of
Ugh.
body types. There's no one look to a person who has diabetes in the same way that there's no one person who has any other autoimmune disease looks. It just was such a like, "Oh, you seem okay with it." Like I can make presumably like I can make a fat joke or something. Like it was just so inappropriate. It was not at my current job, but it was actually a coworker at a previous position. And
Yeah.
it
I
just it
found
was so, like, weird because I was in the workplace too, so I was like, "I don't know how boldly to respond to this
right,
because
you
it's
have
gonna set
your
the
work face on. You
and
can't
it's
be
gonna
like, "Hold my earrings. Let's go."
exactly, and it's just gonna set the tone then. Because I was like, "I don't wanna be
Right.
known as the person who can't take a joke, but then do I want my reputation in this place of work to be someone who allows people to speak to me that way?" Like, it was just very entrapping. I just laughed it off, but that's one of those instances that has always haunted me because, I was fully an adult at this point. I was just like,
Yeah,
"I feel
but
like I should have had something more to say to that," but me making a joke about it, about something that I deal with, is one thing. For someone else to jump in with a comment like that, I was just shocked that, this day and age, someone would make like a diabetes fat joke to a diabetic person at work.
there's just like, whew, so much to unpack there, and none of it has to do with you. Like, I buckle up, everyone, and you're signing up for another Emily tangent. But I have
Girl,
found
go off.
that okay, first things first, I want to say that it's 2022. Obviously, this wasn't in recent year, like the last however many years, but I can't tell you how many times, and this is in my workplace too, and not even in my workplace, but like editing stories that have to do with type 2 diabetes as opposed to type 1. I can't tell you the amount of ignorance and misinformation that there is around all all forms of diabetes. And I have like full high key made it my mission to change the way that we're discussing forms of types of diabetes, because there's so much emphasis put on weight that is such utter bullshit. Like, I can't even, if I had a dollar for every time I was like, "Did you guys know Halle Berry's type 2? Like, did you know, like, this person's type 2?" Like, it's an invisible illness for a reason. Like, this is bullshit. So, there's so much there, but something that you mentioned, like, in this story really kind of took me back to my, sexual harassment training for work. There's just such an overlap in the way that, like, we as women feel like we need to consider how we're going to react to something, because we are already at this like supposed, like, we're already expected to keep our emotions in check to a certain extent. We're already expected to do a lot of these things. And I'm not turning this into like a feminist rant. I'm just saying that it's really so interesting that that was the first thing that my mind went to, because I do think that it is an ability thing versus disability. And this isn't, there's the whole debate, is type 1 a disability? Is this a disability? Whatever. But at the end of the day, like, no, non-diabetics aren't on the receiving end of these statements. So the same thing about like, oh, if a woman could do this, like, I'm not making a ton of sense here, but bear with me. Moral of, I think that nothing you can say would make it okay. Like, nothing you could have there's nothing you could have done differently, or you should have done, that would have made that person's reaction okay. And I know it is super hard, because I can't tell you how many times I just try and laugh off these jokes, because I've gotten to this point where it's like, I am tired. Like, we're tired. We're keeping ourselves alive. We're functioning as an organ that's not fully functioning. We have full-time jobs. We have relationships. We have like friends. We pay taxes. Like, we're functioning members of
I have a
society.
chihuahua. My hands are
Yeah,
full.
exactly. I like to call them chihuahuas, but that's neither here nor there. It's too sometimes it just feels like too much of a freaking burden to like have to explain to someone like, "No, you're wrong." So I had a similar situation occur a couple of months ago. I was meeting a friend's significant other for the first time, and they said we were talking about like how much we love donuts from Krispy Kreme or something funny, and the person was just like, "Yeah," talking about their significant other being like, "Yeah, they eat so many donuts, they're gonna end up with diabetes." And I just like felt a little piece of me break off. I know it seems like I'm being dramatic, but I have to say, like, I've been so secluded living in my COVID bubble that now that I'm like entering into the world again and doing things with, obviously I've been keeping up with my friends, and you know, it's not like I'm meeting a ton of new people. So it's kind of like feels like it's this extra chip on my shoulder that I forgot I have to bring up sometimes, and I don't have to bring it up, but, like, if someone sees my Omnipod, my pump, or my Dexcom, my CGM, continuous glucose monitor, it's like, "Oh, yeah, I need to it's okay that they're asking, I'm all for asking questions, but there's such a fine line between asking questions and an ignorant statement, and I do think it's, like, obviously systemic because, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but the fact that that happened in your workplace and you had to be chill about it, like, I remember when this person said that, I was just like, "Haha," like, I just kinda, like, um, me and my friend just, like, or I think it was Matt. Matt and I just kinda looked at each other and we are like, "Okay," and then I just kept like
Are you gonna tell him or am I?
yeah, we just, like, both didn't have it in us and we just, like, continued, but it was just, like, it takes you it take like, I feel like I forgot about it. I don't know, I literally have been living in a bubble, so now a word from one of our sponsors. Hey, Christie, have you heard of US Med Supply?
I think I've seen a commercial for it. It's a medical supply company, right?
Yeah, but apparently they're the number one distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide, the number one specialty distributor for Omnipod Dash, and the number one fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide. Plus, they're rated as the number one distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys.
Ooh, sounds like something I need to check out. Do they partner with most insurance companies?
Yep, and they'll even help us get set up and work with our insurance companies so we don't have to spend hours on the phone.
The actual dream.
Right? We and all of our pals can head to usmed.com/pals or call 888-721-1516 to sign up now.
Already on their website.
And now back to the episode.
Definitely jolts you a little bit. In more recent times, I met the parents of a friend from college, and I hadn't met them before, and I know that there was absolutely no harm meant, but it was actually one of my first times out of my like COVID bubble. And when I went to say hello to the mom, and I was like, "Oh my god, like I've known your child for years. Like this is so nice to meet you." And she was like, "Oh, are you the diabetic friend?" And I was like, "I so know that you probably were told nothing positive things like Christie's been involved with the podcast, etc." But I was immediately cast there and I couldn't believe how at a loss for words I was. And
It's like
then
a punch to the gut, right? It's like,
later when we went to eat, like everyone was just kind of taking what they wanted. And of course, she just like happened to be right there and just screams at the dessert table, like, "Wait, can you have that?" And I was like, "Why would I be reaching for it if I couldn't eat it?" But it's just like the those looks from people like, is she doing something she's not supposed to do? And it just makes me feel like that stereotypical character in movies, like when the dad has to go on a diet and the whole family's like, "Dad, you can't have that." And I was just like, oh god, I can though.
I feel that. Like to this day, I have family members that ask me, like, "Oh, like, should you be eating that? Can you eat that?" And it's just like,
I would not be reaching to put it in my mouth if I thought for any reason I could not have
well,
it.
it's just like we're not children. Let's say any form of diabetes was even, related to like one piece of cake, if that's going to put someone over the edge and they're going to eat it, like is anyone else to tell them not to other than their doctor? Like, are you their doctor? No. So keep it to yourself. Like, I strongly feel that way, whether it's someone's lactose intolerant or gluten free, unless you're sharing the bed with that person for the night and you're like, geez, can you like lay off? This is going to cause the toots or something, like lay it off. But it's just like, it's not your business. And it's like my body, my choice. If I want to have this piece of cake, let me eat this damn piece of cake. And you know what? My blood sugar goes up to 400. I'm going to live with the consequences, not you. So leave me alone.
I just think people, and again, I'd like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think it might have been in her way, like trying to
Oh, for sure.
show support, like trying to be okay with it, but
I think
it
she's probably trying to show that she cares in her own way.
it just
It still hurts.
but it just to give the contrast of just like that's as personal as it gets. Like I was staying there that night versus in the workplace. Like there's no right way for people to assume what the tone is. And I think that when people don't really understand, they just kind of want to connect with you. They want to show you that they're okay with it or say the exact wrong thing that makes it seem like they're not. Just sometimes less is more, guys. Like for any non-diabetic listeners, like if you're not sure what the right thing to say is, it's actually okay to just kind of follow our
Not
lead and not, yeah, like don't make the joke or ask the question that you're like, this might be totally inappropriate. Like, and it's also okay. I don't mind answering questions. Like, if
Yeah,
someone
I'm
wants
all
to
for
understand,
questions.
if someone wants to ask straight up, like, what's the difference between type 1 and 2, I have so much more time for that than someone making a statement that shows how much they're assuming. So if you want to ask a question, I'm happy to. But I always really appreciate when people say, I'm not sure if this is the right way to ask this, or, I don't want to assume, but like it might seem silly and unnecessary, but even if it's a friend of yours who's diabetic, like putting in that little bit of extra effort just to say, like, I am trying and I'm trying not to be offensive, it sometimes is a little bit nicer. Like, it inherently makes the potentially problematic question a little bit nicer to just say, like, I'm trying to phrase this right. Like, I'm trying to get this right.
Right. I feel like for me, one of my favorite things that consistently comes up is like, "Oh, I had a cat that was diabetic," or, "Oh, I
Yes.
had a dog that was diabetic."
Like,
And that
woof.
honestly just makes me chuckle. Like, I'm not mad about that. It's definitely old. It gets old. It's like, yeah, I can't imagine that must be difficult. Like,
Sorry for your loss.
I truly do, and that sounded like sarcasm, but, like, I would hate to have to inject a dog or a cat, like, that sounds sad. It doesn't sound like a fun time, but at the same time, like, here we are,
Right.
you
It's
know?
I'm not the
It
one to like.
they're trying to connect with us, They're
Mhm.
trying to be like, "Oh," it's like the way I talk about myself all the time when someone like, I try to equate my experiences with someone else's to be like, "Oh, yeah, we have these we can connect." But, it comes from usually it comes from a good place. I much rather people ask me questions, like, fully I think I had one time a guy hitting on me at a bar, this was obviously years ago, um, being like, "Oh, yeah, like, you gotta" he was an EMT, and he was like, "Oh, yeah" trigger warning for anyone listening, if you get easily offended by horrible comments about things, then might wanna take a second. But, he was like, "Aren't you worried about losing your legs?" And I was like, "You're an EMT?" I literally said that. I was like,
You're in the medical
"Dude, I'm
field?
worried about you saving people." Like, I mean, I know, again, that's not fair because they're obviously trained for very specific things and they didn't go to medical school and all this stuff. But I was just kind of like, why would you ever ask someone if they're afraid to lose their legs? There's no good situation in which that's okay. Like, I'm sorry, what? So I just like, and this was probably like 6 years ago. I just am kind of now, anything else someone says to me is like pales in comparison.
That is
But
so gross. I hate that. Also, how did he think that that was like gonna result in anything positive?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, that wasn't his pickup line. Like we were already like talking. I think he was saying something about how he picked up a diabetic who had no legs like the week before or something. And I was like, dude, this is not the way to get my number.
I was gonna say, like, oh,
Like,
aren't you worried about losing your
at
legs? Yeah,
all.
you're right. Let's get out of here. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, "Oh,
what was the
nothing turns me on than
what
my
was the
mortality." Like,
expected response to that? No, and some people
yeah.
also will jump in and say, like, oh, my so and so was diabetic. Yeah, like she lost fingers, like she had all this horrible stuff happen. Like, okay, like, because then you feel like you're in a position where you need to say sorry and just say wow. I tend to just like wow, like nod the head, like yeah.
Yeah, I'm always like, "I'm sorry to hear that."
What am I supposed to
I mean,
what
that's
am I supposed to
rough, but
say?
also, like, yeah, I don't know. I think that um, for every comment that makes me queasy, I also like to try and remember the nice comments, like, you know, "You're killing it, love the podcast," or like, "Wow," like, I don't know. I also hate it when people are like, I couldn't do that." I'm like, "Well, if it's that or
Oh,
death, you do it." So
that was a big thing when I was first diagnosed. Because I was diagnosed when I was 17. Obviously, in high school, you're just like hormonal and trying to find yourself.
and you're about to go to college, like, there's just you were diagnosed at a
I was
time.
already feeling like I had this huge handicap, and I did not like to talk about it with my friends at all. But obviously, I didn't want to not hang out with them, and I feel like it was just a very popular comment whenever I would go to inject myself. Just, oh my God, I could never inject myself. Like, oh, I could never stick a needle in my body. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you know what? Actually, if you had to, you would, because
I just straight up say that. I've like to this day, people will be like, "Oh, I could never if I had to change my pump or something." People are like, "Oh, I could never do that." I was like, "Yeah, I used to say that, and then it was this or die, so here I am," and that shuts people up pretty quickly. All this to say, this has turned into a rant sesh that I'm always here for. But as far as like some tangible things for those who are newly diagnosed or people who want a refresher on how to handle situations, obviously I'm not the queen of etiquette, but I will say, when in doubt, just take a deep breath. I think I've realized now, when I was younger, I would definitely when I was first diagnosed, I'd try to explain everything to people and just be like, try to get them to see things in a certain way. And now I'm just like, I really do pick and choose my battles. Like if someone
you can't save
is,
everyone. It's not
you
your
can't
job.
save everyone.
Not your job
You
to
can't,
explain social etiquette or give a scientific breakdown about why what they said is incorrect. It's not your job. If you have the energy for it and you feel like you can handle it at that time, it's
or you want
entire
to.
like read the situation. If it's something
Yeah.
you want to do and it's going to make you feel better to speak your piece, I'm always like on the diabetics team because I'm biased, but I'm allowed to be. But it's also not
Same.
your job if you're not up for it.
You're not a diabetes educator.
It's not
Like you
it's not
are,
your
but you're
job to
not.
it's not your job to explain to people what you deal with, why you're dealing with it, or again, when people say things that are like scientifically incorrect and they're like trying to correct what I know about diabetes, I kind of hardly ever even go there. Because
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
I have an endocrinologist. I'm not looking for like another one at whatever
I
social function I'm
fully
at.
got in a fight with a family member who is a doctor who tried to tell me that alcohol raises someone's blood sugar. And I was like, I was like, yeah, like a frozen margarita will, but like,
Yeah.
do you want to watch my Dexcom after I've had 2 glasses of wine? Like, do you want to watch my like full on fight? And I was like, I can't discuss this with you anymore. Like, I just can't. And also, like, stop practicing medicine. But I just, and this is par for the course with a lot of medical people that work in the medical field. If you are not a specialist in a certain field, I've realized that, like, I really don't wanna hear it. I said what I said. Like, if you are not an endocrinologist, if you are not a specialist, like a nurse that works with I just, like, I'm sure you've seen things and you obviously know more than I do about a lot of things medically, but no one knows our bodies like us. Um, so yeah, I've said a lot of incriminating things on this episode, but I will say at the end of the day, the
Yeah,
best thing
sorry.
we can
You
all
had an
do.
actual tip there that was beautiful. You said take a breath if you want to
Yeah,
build on
thanks.
that.
Take a breath, decide if it's worth, decide if this is maybe a relationship that's just starting and you want to set things, straight on, set boundaries for yourself moving forward with this person about how you want to discuss diabetes. Sure, take that conversation, maybe like bring it up the next time after you've thought about it some more, or just, take the chance to educate where you can. Or if you're like, hey, I'm exhausted, I don't feel this right now, that's okay too. And that's something that I think has taken me a longer time to realize, especially when a lot of people aren't really open to hearing what you have to say. They just kind of like, oh, I made this joke or I did this thing, but they don't really care because it doesn't pertain to them. Like they don't have diabetes. So they're like not given a second thought to it, which is a lot of people, which is it doesn't make them bad people. It just, it means they're thinking about them. So I'm going to think about me and save my peace and not go down that path. I think there's a time and a place for everything. And if you feel like this is something that will bring you joy or maybe lessen a knot in your stomach, then do it up. But you really don't have to.
Yeah, and I find that giving examples to your friends and to your loved ones of experiences that haven't gone well, and you don't need to share, you know, the level of detail that we have in terms of putting our examples into context. Like you can just make up a friend if you don't want to raise
Use our
questions.
stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't want to indicate who exactly it was, I do think it's a good strategy to tell friends and family like, this happened and I hated it. So if you know that you're going to be in a situation where they're introducing you to people, like help them help you because I've shared with friends that I had the mother of a friend who was just really, I think, trying to take care of me, but just doing it in all the wrong ways. And that way they can kind of relate to their family. Should I come over for dinner or whatever, like, don't ask Christy if she is okay having whatever food. Like, she will take what she knows what to eat. Like, you don't need to lay out anything special for her because I don't have any allergies. Like,
Yeah.
it just kind of depends. I'll make a decision. I'll make like a game day decision based on how my blood sugars are looking, how much of whatever I can have. Like any other person with type 1, like, we kind of just have to roll with it. But it's, I think a good way to kind of be proactive is use examples. You can use our stories or whatever, but I think to avoid some situations getting like too out of hand, if you know that you're staying someplace else or something like that, just kind of giving an
Yeah.
indication of, I've had this said to me in the past, didn't really work for me. So if you just want to pass along to like our host for the weekend, whatever, like, give someone else a job. You do enough.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, like this chronic illness, there's no one size fits all to any way to handle these things. Like, this is just kind of what we've gleaned in the past. How long have you had it now, Christy? 7 years, 8 years?
2012, summer of 2012. Oh, so
Oh,
this will be my 10-year this summer
Mazel tov.
on July. I like was in a coma, so I don't remember the exact day.
Yikes. Head back to season one,
Oh,
episode one to hear that harrowing story. And I do not recommend listening to that story if you were recently
I'll
diagnosed.
get the exact date. My mom knows because honestly, speaking of donuts, I should get myself something to celebrate. Maybe I'll get a cake. I want a cake
Do it
now.
up.
Now I
Do it
want
up. Yeah.
cake.
I always want cake.
I deserve that.
Um, yeah, so I'm celebrating my diaversary, and by celebrating, I mean surviving. That's really how I get through these. I don't really celebrate. But I did want to say one more thing. Like, when you were saying about how asking what we can and can't eat, I actually am like all for. I mean, I don't request people ask. Like, I don't request to know what's for dinner before agreeing to go somewhere. But if I know we're having like someone wants to order in Chinese food, like, I'll probably eat before, just because Chinese food really specifically sends me over the edge shugs wise. But I think, it's those comments for me that really get my goat. It's like, "Oh, can you eat," or like, "Should you be eating that?" Like, when it's already in my mouth, I'm like,
Oh, you're
"Dude."
right. Let me spit this out.
Yeah, "Oh, thank God you said something." Like, "Oh, no. It's not an allergy, it's it's life." So, anywho, on that note, this has been another ranting edition of Emily and Christy take on diabetes ignorance. If you liked what you heard and you made it through this episode, power to you. Hoping that we can get you guys to come back and listen to another episode. We have some exciting guests coming up in the pipeline, including a certain new mother who is Miriam, and so
Mama
excited to hear
Miriam.
about her pregnancy journey. So thank you guys for listening. Definitely check us out on Instagram at pancreas_pals, on Facebook at pancreaspalspp. Slide into our DMs on both. Hit us up on our email, which is pancreaspals123@gmail.com. We love hearing from you guys. We love hearing ideas on what we should cover. And we really love your very sweet and frequent messages about how the podcast has helped you. It really warms our cold, cold diabetic hearts. So actually, Christy has a very warm heart. So I'm just talking about myself.
Ooh, and smooth
Um,
hands. I just took off the glove.
oh, thank God. So we'll be sure to send a picture. Um, okay, guys, I hope that you come back for another episode. And thanks so much, Christy.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Bye, everyone.
Have a great week. Bye. Today's episode was brought to you by US Med Supply. Thanks for listening. Hey, Christy, have you heard of US Med Supply?
I think I've seen a commercial for it. It's a medical supply company, right?
Yeah, but apparently they're the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide, the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod Dash, and the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide. Plus, they're rated as the #1 distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys.
Ooh, sounds like something I need to check out. Do they partner with most insurance companies?
Yep, and they'll even help us get set up and work with our insurance companies so we don't have to spend hours on the phone.
The actual dream.
Right? We and all of our pals can head to usmed.com/pals or call 888-721-1516 to sign up now.
Already on their website.